All right, Alex, thank you for joining me on this Zoom right now and doing this, what you call deal hack.
Yes.
I love this idea. So what is deal hacking, big picture?
Well, deal hacking is where we go into a market and we're looking at the overall transactions that are happening because data doesn't lie. A lot of people get into this business and they're like, oh, I don't know what I should offer. I don't know what even this deal is. So they start guessing and they start throwing numbers out there and making offers that they shouldn't be making. Deal hacking is strategically looking at the data, which will help you make offers on properties that are actually going to get accepted because these are numbers that are actually happening out there already.
Yeah.
So we get a big picture of what's going on with the buyers. We get a big picture of what's going on with the properties, and we can really make some strategic decisions without having to guess or put sellers in a bad position and actually give ourselves a chance at making a deal work.
Yeah, I love this because like one of the things that you do that's really cool is, a lot of times we create our numbers off of ARV, right, after appraisal value, and then we kind of like try
to
don't
like ARV, mail.
And then back into our buy number, and something that's way faster, way easier that you do, I like this too, is, well, why don't we just figure out what the cash buyers are paying in that specific neighborhood? And now we know the number, assuming that it's a similar house, but now we know the number they're paying, and then we can base our wholesale off of what they're paying. So I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So
and that's the whole premise of it. Stop the guessing, just use the data that's there and then make the decisions, strategic decisions based on that. And you can do that from cash buyers. You could do it even down to motivated sellers. I mean, you can do a lot of different things with it.
That's awesome. And we're going to actually do a real live example now. And listen, guys, where you're getting the data may vary. Like you may have My Software Flipster or PropStream, Batch, like whatever, MLS. Wherever you're able to access this information is where you're going to gather this data. So just keep in mind, you got to be able to get access to the data. If you don't have access to the data, you're like dead in the water. Right? I mean, like you just can't go anywhere. So
yeah, and getting the data, the key with that too is I tell people, you want to become a market pro. You want to stop all the guesswork. You want to be able to go into any market in the country, anywhere, anytime, and see what's going on. So that way, oh, this is the major buyer over here, or this is, a mom and pop buyer, or whatever the situation is. And you can easily make decisions whether you were just dropped into a brand new market, which you knew nothing about, because you know how to interpret the data.
So here's what we're going to do. I've got a wholesale deal right now, private seller under contract near Virginia Beach, where Alex is from. It's actually, how do you say the
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth. Not
yes.
Portsmouth. Not Portsmouth.
Not Portsmouth. No. Portsmouth. And by the way, I really like your shirt.
This was not planned, guys. We are not sponsoring. So yeah, let's dive into this deal. This deal is about 15 minutes, right, Alex, from like where you actually live. So it's like
yeah, absolutely.
And so walk us through now. Like I said to Alex, Alex, I got this off-market property. Here it is. I've got pictures and video. Here it is. Here's the number that it's under contract currently with the seller. How would you deal hack this property and figure out what the right number is? And we're going to do it right now, actually on a real deal. So take it away, Alex. How would we do that?
All right. Well, so, what's interesting is we're kind of doing this a little bit backwards because we've got this deal being brought now. So the offer has already been made and there's a contract, right? Which is fine though. But you as an investor, you're in Puerto Rico, right? So by using these principles, we're going to be able to see here, what can we do with this deal? Is it a good renovation? Is it a good rehab? Is it a good wholesale? If it is a wholesale, what can we wholesale it for? So
Alex, the right way to do it is to use this technique you're going to share to determine your contract price.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Now what we're doing is we're going to confirm if I got
We're going to verify. We're going to verify.
Yeah, we're going to verify if I actually have a deal. So a little backwards, but I love that you said that because we never want to be putting properties under contract that aren't actually good deals. Like that's a big no-no. always want to go in with our best number. Now, if we get new information and we have to, revisit the contract or whatever, I get that. But the idea here is figure out the right number, get the contract at that price, and now that you're going to have success with your buyer because you've got a good deal and you know the data.
Absolutely. Let's see here. And by the way, this is MLS. So this is obviously the best kind of data that you can absolutely have, but you don't have to have the MLS to do this. You can do it with other sources like you were talking about.
Yeah.
What I always like to do is when I do this, I look at the last year of action in an area.
And you're doing active, pendings, and sold. You want to see all the data.
Yes, because pending is actually quite important as well, because that'll give us an indication of what's going on like right now. Sold data, that could be 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year from now, right? And we know that the market was absolutely on fire at that point. But pending is really going to give us an idea of what's happening. Are days on market going up? Are they going down? Are they staying the same?
You mentioned on pending days on market. That's really big because a pending comp, you don't actually know what it's under contract for. But if you look at days on market, it'll give you a really good idea. So like if it's 1 day on market, there's a pretty good chance that it's at, asking price.
Full price. Yeah, absolutely. Or more.
Or more. Definitely or more. Whereas if it was like 6 months and then when pending, maybe there's a bit of a discount from the asking price. But I agree, pendings are super valuable because those are going to be the brand new solds in a few days when it closes.
Absolutely. And not only that, when we look at pendings to the actual sold price, we'll be able to tell if we're in a really good hot market or a flipping market, if you will, because the sold price is going to be higher than the actual listing price or what that pending price is.
Now,
that's how we know we're in a hot market at that point.
Love that. Now, why, Alex, do you look at actives? What do you want to see with actives?
Actives, we want to see if inventory is starting to go up, or if there's just no inventory out there. And if that's the case, we know that if we are in and out of a property, that we have a good chance that this is going to be a pretty much in and out type deal, and we're good to go. So active gives us the idea of market saturation.
Yes, and it gives you an idea of competition. What else is for sale right now that might be similar to your deal you're looking at? Or like sometimes you may want to say, well, what's the fixed up market looking like? What's the retail rehab stuff? How long is it sitting? How long is it? What are people doing? Are there flippers in the neighborhood? So actives are still valuable data, but we also got to remember active is just what somebody's asking. It doesn't actually mean what the market thinks or will do. That's sold data, and then those pendings are going to tell you more about that.
Absolutely. So the first thing I do in whatever program I'm using, obviously, is I'm just going to enter the address and see what pops up. And that way, if I can look at a map like this, for instance, I get an overview of what's going on inside the market. Mm-hmm. Correct? So I like to, back out a little bit and get a little picture, right? So this is a very tight-knit little section of what's going on. When you're using the MLS, the cool thing is you can see these twos like this. And when you see a 2, that's a property that's been bought and sold within a year. It's a flip, right? So
because you put 12 months. So it's saying in 12 months, there's actually 2 comps.
Exactly. 2 property, 1 address, 2 different records, right? So see if I click on this one right here, it pulls it up and I can see a property that was bought for 85 and flipped out for 217, right?
Ooh, that's actually an awesome comp right there.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, right? And it's even on the same street as what we're looking at. That's like a really quick way to hone in on it. Here's another one. This is a little smaller, 867 square feet, went for 42, sold for 125, right? That right there is not, fully comparable because of the size difference and everything.
But there's 2 fix and flips right there in the neighborhood.
Yes, within a half-mile radius.
Is that your circle, half mile?
Yeah, it's 0.25.
Now, Alex, question, would you cross that major road to the right there, Effingham?
So I don't like to cross major roads if I don't have to. Exactly. One thing I like to do is kind of come up with the shape in between major roads and things, right? So we've got a road coming up here. We've got a road coming down the side on Elm. We've got a little bit of action here on this other side of the road over here. I'm not too worried about that, but I like to stay within that same little section there.
Yeah, so
And
here's my rule, Alex. I like to not cross major roads, but it doesn't mean that I won't look because we're actually on that main road.
yes,
Which means those comps to the right, I guess that would be to the east.
yes.
They may still be relevant. We don't know if they're relevant because we're crossing a road, but they may be relevant. We have to determine the relevancy. I call it relevancy. We always want to look for relevancy, but we do know, like, if you start going way over there, even though it's half a mile or a mile, this is a very concentrated area. So
Yes.
you're going to be, if you're crossing 3 or 4 major roads, now you're definitely in a different neighborhood, even though it's a half a mile or a mile. So you want to stay super tight in this location.
So one thing I like to do as well, if I am going to cross major roads, is I want to make sure I'm in the same subdivision or building development. And the way I know that too is so I could click on this one, which is actually your next door neighbor. And I could come in here and I'm going to, let's say I'm going to look at the listing. And again, you can do this on other things as well. But I see that my subdivision is Brighton, okay? And there are a lot of areas, and you know as well as I do, being from Michigan and Detroit and all this kind of stuff, stuff is literally block to block and street to street. And if you don't watch it, you can make a really big mistake.
especially on these super concentrated markets where everybody's on like 40 and 50-foot lots, you know, like you want to stay.
That's a big thing there too, is the lot size, because that's going to give you an idea of the way the neighborhood was platted and development and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure, is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use the name of that subdivision to further trim off the outside comps to make sure, even if we do spread it out, they are still considered the same subdivision.
So did that just exclude everything not Brighton?
It did, yes.
Okay. So Brighton must be bigger than your radius because it looks like it kind of kept everything in the circle.
Yes. So let's see here. Yeah. So Brighton still does extend a little bit further out.
Okay. So that's good. At least we know now that it wasn't tighter, right? So you're good still.
But I'm still, if I can, going to live right here in this section here, right? All this other stuff, I could kind of go take a look-see at it, but I'm going to keep my concentration right around here, because I know when you cross this street, you start getting into a lot worse area.
And you really don't need to, because you got a ton of data. You really don't need to go very far anyway.
Exactly. So when I do that now, here's the next thing I'm going to do. Because there is some newer development going on, I'm going to want to make sure that my year built is going to be similar to our project or our subject here, right? Okay. So we're built in 1955. I'm going to go back to my criteria here, and I'm going to say I want everything built from 1940 to, let's say, 1965 maybe. See, so that cut us down a whole bunch now. So now when we go in here and we look at it, we can see a bunch of solds. Now at this point, now that I've homed in on my subdivision, my year built, I like to pull up and look just as the results as a whole.
Would you add a square footage filter yet or not yet?
Not just yet, because I still want to get an overall picture of what's going on, right? So one thing you can do is you could come in here into the closed price, and I can look and see what the cheapest property sold for. And so in this situation, I see 43,000, but yet it is only 760 square feet, right? Yep. And do we want to disclose what we have what you have the property or contract at this point?
81,000.
81,000. And our square footage is also 1,700 square feet in our in our house, right? Yep. So the cheapest here that we see is 43,760 square feet, 1,000, 60,000, 768, 70,000. And if we look at it, let's see here, looking through our square footage, there's not a lot of 1,700 square footers, right? But when we get close to 15, we got a 129. It looks like more of these would be more of the renovated ones as we move to the top in that situation.
So far we're looking okay.
So yeah, so far it looks okay. But one thing I also want to see is what the renovated comps are going for. So I'm going to sort and look at the most expensive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we do what I refer to as reverse comps. So in a deal hacking situation, or the data I like to analyze, is there are properties that were just bought by an investor, right? Very clear cut. You can see what they paid for it. But what a lot of people miss is what was the property bought before it was flipped. Yeah. So when we see those twos, that's where we can see the property what it was bought for before it was flipped. I call that a reverse comp, because a lot of people miss that because they're just looking at that end comp when it was just sold.
That's right. So it's because, you know, that fix and flipper who sold it for 200 or 225, what did he buy it for? And you can get that data.
Exactly. And you don't need the MLS to do this. You could do this with other property sources where you can see that. And I put more stock in what did that property sell for beforehand than I do than the actual renovated comp.
And not only that, but you'll get to this, but that is your ideal buyer because he just did a deal in your neighborhood. He's probably looking for another deal, or you might.
Because it's funny, because you might call somebody up and be like, yo, I just saw you bought this property. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be busy in this property for the next 6 months. You know? Yeah, but then when you do the reverse comp and they just sold the property and they just cashed that check and they're like, woo, where's my next deal? That's the better buyer.
I have a rule that flippers love to do repeat deals in the same neighborhoods. They love it. When I flip, I love that because I know the neighborhood. I got contractors already. I got my head around everything. I got an agent to sell it. I got all these. I've already built my team. So another deal in the same neighborhood is like gravy for me, right?
Yes.
That's how the flippers look at it.
Exactly. So if we start digging into these here, we can say, okay, here's one that's 2,100 square feet. Now, keep in mind, well, this is percolating. I don't know if we can go to the pictures real easy of the property. But what we can tell fairly easily is that that property that we've got has an addition on there. It's really not a 1,700 square foot house. It may be more of a 1,100 square foot house with an addition. So the bedrooms in the house are really 1,100 square foot bedrooms, not 1,700, if that makes sense.
Yeah, pull that picture. Can you pull up that Dropbox link with the picture?
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
There it is. So show the addition part.
So here's the original part of the house. And then here's the addition off to the side. And it probably kind of wraps around the back as well, how it was done.
Yeah. Floor plan is a big deal because, again, remember, whoever you wholesale to, if he's a flipper, he's going to be looking at what's the retail market think about this house. Are they going to like that floor plan? You know, like Alex said, does it have a weird step down or low ceilings, or like what is that additional space doing? Is it whack like usage or hokey done or not permanent?
Yep.
So again, just because it's 1,700 square feet, which is the biggest house in that market, like the comps, there's nothing really bigger than 1,500. So then it doesn't mean that now all of a sudden it's not a deal. It just means we can't take a straight price per square foot and multiply it by the per foot price, and we're going to get 300,000 for it. It means we have to discount probably that additional space and treat it more like 1,100, 1,200, something like that, probably.
Right. Exactly. And so here's another interesting thing, right? Because we've got this house. I'm just starting at the most expensive and moving down. It was listed for 220 and sold for 225. Remember we talked about markets where a property was listed for a certain amount and then went for a certain amount.
Yeah.
And in that situation, that's exactly what we have here. One thing you can notice, this is very natural square footage. It's got a garage. There's no addition. It's an actual house that has
all brick
and all brick.
So great curb appeal.
Yes. So now let's see if we have any reverse comps that we can look at here. And here we go. All right. So we've got, looking at our last market and sale history, we've got a property here that sold for $145 back in 2019 for when it was sold. for the first time. And then when they flipped it out, they sold it for the 220 that we saw, right? So that's actually a really strong number, the fact that they paid 145 for it. But you see the construction of the house and all that kind of stuff.
Alex, do you look at pictures then to try to get an idea of how much they spent on the rehab maybe?
Well, yeah, we can just look at the pictures right here. And you can look inside, and it's got, you know, nice floor.
But this wasn't a full rehab. This wasn't
nice open kitchen. I mean, it's not a complete full rehab, but for that area, yeah, it's a clean, livable house.
But it's not like they dropped $100 grand on this thing. This is looking to me like a carpet paint type of rehab. That kitchen tile looks like it's a few years old, you know.
They might have put a new roof, right? They might have put a new roof on it.
Newer, you know, this looks to me like a 20, 25K rehab, maybe something like that.
But the way it sits on the street is a lot nicer than what we're working with as well in the neighborhood. Now, here's the thing too. Remember, we want to take a look at this. That one was on Argyle Street. So look at that, right here.
And where are we?
A little lower. We're right up here.
Literally a block away.
So that's nice. That is a nice factor there with it being 2,000 square feet. And so we could look at that list that we were on. What that really turned out to be the luck of the draw, that this was like one of the nicer, closer comps. And we saw who the buyer was too. We saw that it was an investor in an LLC.
Yeah.
Look at this one, which is your next door neighbor that sold, Sing Collection LLC, 195.5. And we come in here and we look at these pictures. And then we got a nice brick house again. Now this one's looking pretty nice.
Yeah. Now this one's a full rehab.
You know, nicer kitchen, tile floor, nice cabinets, nice bathrooms. They did a good job.
Curious what they bought that for, Alex.
Why don't we find out? That's the beauty of it. One of my pet peeves is when I get a call from an investor in the area. What are you willing to pay for property? You know? What's your formula you use? What's the least amount of profit you'll work on? You know, skip all that and just go right to the data, right? Well, here you go. They paid $75,000 for that property.
Okay, and they spent some good money on it. Now, for me, I'm putting a little bit of weight on this one.
With it being right next door, that's a pretty good comp. I don't know if it's brick all the way around. From what I can tell, looks like it could be, right?
Now I'm from Detroit, where there's a lot. We call them brickers. You call them brickies.
Bricky. Yeah.
But the market puts a lot of value on brick versus vinyl.
You can get 20,000 more on a house.
Yeah. Same with Detroit. So a lot of markets that have that brick, it's a real premium.
Yes.
And
I think we're siding on the house that you're looking at.
Yeah, ours just has a little bit of brick on the front of it is all.
So if it were me, I would be reaching out to the Sing Collection people. If we try to stay close by, 129, 211, 141, 170. Let's look at this one. 211, 1,500 square feet. And we look at it, and actually looks like somebody lived in this. Maybe they did the renovation themselves.
So this one, everybody watching here, Alex immediately spotted it, but you can tell a flipper because it's vacant, renovated, and maybe staged. When you see like that picture, you know, plants and a bicycle and stuff, you know it's a retail seller, not a flipper.
So they've lived here.
Yep.
This just gives us an idea of what ARV could potentially be, but this is not going to be something that's going to work for us in the sense of like a reverse comp, right?
Yeah, but it got 215, which is good news.
That is good news, yes.
So if you were to guess, Alex, or not guess, but I mean, based on the data, what do you think ours would retail at if you put a nice reno on it?
I would say, and depending on how the flow of that property is.
Assuming the flow is decent.
We got the 195.
Which is on our street.
And it's on our street right next door. I would say 200, maybe a safe price is what my thought would be.
Now let's talk a little bit about Effingham, the road. So be careful on a major road because buyers will prefer side streets, quiet side streets over a main road.
And so that's interesting on this one, right? Because it does have Effingham as its address. It does look whereas the front of the house does face Effingham, but it does have, maybe it does have a potential side entrance to it, right? And if that's the case, that's going to help. That will give you a bump. And there's nothing wrong with doing like a nice little Google Street View to get an idea of the street. Does the house look the same? Does it sit the same?
So the subject property is the second one, and that comp is that one right to the left, right?
Right. And we look at it, we can see it's completely bricked all the way around.
No garage though.
No garage.
And then that road is a 2-lane road, or there's a medium?
It's a 4-lane with a median.
So I would say that one's not a corner, not off the corner. It's still the main road. That comp.
Yes. Yes. So the big contention would be the brick and then the way the square footage lays out on the end. But I would feel comfortable with a 200 ARV 200, if we want to say that, right? Yeah. But remember, we're looking at what property sold beforehand, and we're seeing, 75,000, 80,000.
Unless our addition is amazing and there's that extra couple hundred square feet is a big deal, probably right, 200. If it is a big deal, maybe it'll get 215 or 220 or something to feel safe, 200. But again, who cares about that? Because now if that matters, we got to back in the rehab, back out closing fees and commissions and profit and carrying costs and then wholesale fee, right? We got to do this whole formula. Or we just say, look, the buyer next door paid 75. If I want to bring this deal to him, I better bring it to him for 75, which means I need to be at 65 or 60 or whatever I want to make. Isn't that
well, maybe it's going to depend on that buyer, right? Because the fact that he did well on that rehab, so maybe he could squeeze 85, 90, who knows?
Maybe he'll pay 95. We don't, right? Because time's gone by and maybe he'll feel more confident in the market and stuff. But that gives us a really good idea of what we're dealing with. And the very first person we should go with is this Sing Collection.
Yes, there's a couple things we could do with deal hacking. We can come in here. If we look at the listing and we have access to this, we could go to the agent that listed this property for them and then say, hey, your buyer did a spectacular job. Do you think they're looking for any more rehabs that you would like to list for them?
Like next door.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what I would do, because the agent will refer you for free because they want another listing on the retail side.
Absolutely. Yes.
And they look really good because they're bringing a potential deal to their client. So you don't even have to pay the agent for that referral. Just call them up and do what Alex said. You say, hey, listen, I noticed that you represented a flipper on this house. I got the one right now under contract next door. I'm really busy right now, looking to see if he's interested in this deal. I'll just do a quick assignment to him or whatever. And then can you put me in touch with him? Or can you go show it to him, whatever he wants to do, and then see what they do.
That is an example of a deal hack there, from looking at existing data, what's going on, honing in on the area, finding out who the buyers are, what the buyers are paying, and then evaluating that based on the subject property of what you're looking at.
Yeah, love that. So guys, I hope this was really helpful. I've done some, I've done this deal hack strategy. I've done some examples on my YouTube channel, Alex, where I did this like on Redfin. And as long as there's enough data, you can back into it. Now, you can see what they bought it for as long as it was on market, because it'll show you in the history.
Yes.
If you bought it private, then you don't see that, which is where the MLS would come in handy, because you can get public.
Yes.
One real quick thing I want to share with everybody, and Alex said this in the very beginning. He said, if you're going to use a tool for doing this deal hacking strategy, there isn't a tool more effective than the MLS. The MLS has the most data, the most filters. It's going to allow you to do all these different things like he did with neighborhood and all this stuff better than anything else. In fact, everybody else is trying to get that data and third-party serve it to us, right? So how do you get access to MLS? Well, clearly, if you get your real estate license, sign up under a broker, pay your MLS dues, sign up for MLS, you can do it. But I teach a really cool strategy where if you go to a licensed agent, you can get set up under that agent as an admin, and you have your own login, so you're not logging into theirs. Now you can't set up showings and represent yourself as an agent, but you can get MLS, and now you can get in and do everything Alex just did. So what I do and what I teach is find an agent that you know in your market and go to them and say, hey, I'll pay your MLS fee every month, whatever it is, $60 or $75. I'll pay that if you'll set me up as an admin so I can have a login to the MLS. All I'm going to do is use it for comping and data. But that's a really fast, easy way, legally and everything else, to get MLS for doing exactly what Alex just did.
And you should be able to let them work your leads that you weren't going to do anything with either, that they can get listings.
Exactly. So let's talk about that real quick. So I'm licensed in Michigan, and in my Michigan market, when I'm on the phone with this private seller, if their number's too high, more than I can pay, I'll say to them, I'll say, listen, sounds like what you need is a retail buyer. And the best way to get a retail buyer is with a real estate agent. And I work with an agent who can help you get that number you're trying to get. Why don't you sit down with them and see if that's the right decision for you? I refer that agent. Since I'm licensed, I can now get a referral fee and, you know, split that listing fee of 3% or whatever. Or if you can't receive a fee, because you do have to be licensed to receive the fee, the referral fee, you can at least give them those leads as a value for them giving you MLS.
Exactly.
Now they feel more compelled to share their MLS with you because they're benefiting by you giving them leads. So even that's worth it. So guys, hope you found this super helpful. I love this. Alex, I learned a bunch of new things watching you do that. Really cool technique. I hope you guys found a lot of value in that. By the way, you know, follow Alex, like I mentioned in the very beginning. If you're not a part of his wholesaling group, Wholesaling House is full-time. It is the largest Facebook group for wholesalers. Make sure you're on there. There's all kinds of activity, information, conversation that goes on there. Alex has a YouTube channel, and we'll put all of his contact info in the description, but make sure you're following Alex. He's putting out some really great information that can help you be successful in this business. And Alex, thanks again. All right. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll see you on the next video.